Hi guys, today I am here to do a book haul, so without further ado, let's jump straight in and start with the physical books that I bought myself recently. One of those books was Tentacle by Rita Indiana. This is published by And Other Stories, which generally publish translated fiction, which this is, and it sounds so surreal and weird and magical and completely up my alley. In fact, one of the sentences on the back says, "It's the Tempest meets the telenovela. Are you not sold already?" Well, this book, from what I gather, is somewhat science fiction. It involves time travel and a main character whose responsibility it is to essentially cure climate change through time travel. And her specific interest lies with the ocean. She, I also believe, is queer, or at least there are central queer characters, as it says it explores queer politics in this book, as well as poverty, sex, colonialism and contemporary art, bursting with punk energy and lyricism. It is restless, addictive trip. Just so many adjectives and so much going on in such a small blurb and what looks like a really small book, but I am so sold on every single one of those things. I cannot wait to pick this up, and both my friend Jen and I picked a copy up together, so we'll probably read this one together. I then have a book that I'm ridiculously excited for, and that is Christopher Paolini's new book. How long has it been? I feel like the last book in Christopher Paolini's Inheritance Cycle, which was the fourth book, came out when I was in like second year of university. I'm sure that's when it came out, which would have been around 2011, 2012, 2013. But you know, it's been like a solid like 5 or more years since that came out. And he finally has a new book, and that is The Fork, the Witch and the Worm, Tales from Allegasia. So this is a selection of 3 short stories, essentially. It's set in the world of Allegasia, which is the same world that the Inheritance Cycle is set in. The Inheritance Cycle is one of my favourite fantasy series. It starts off with Eragon, and it basically is just my favourite dragon book. Saphira, the main dragon in these stories, is brilliant. She is like optimum dragon. And I believe her and her companion Eragon are involved in these short stories, so I'm so excited to see more from Eragon and Saphira, even if they are short stories as opposed to a novel, and I just really cannot wait to dive back into this world. I then have Wild Beauty by Anna Marie McLemore. This is an author I have seen so much hype for on BookTube. I see a lot of praise for her and her writing, and when I saw a copy of this in Forbidden Planet, I thought, hey, treat yourself, and I picked it up. Naturally. I believe this is a young adult fantasy / magic realism novel. I'm not sure how heavy it is on the fantastical elements. I'll have to see when I get into it, but Anna Marie McLemore is a Latina author, and it says, for nearly a century the Nomolovides women have tended the ground of La Pradera, the lush estate gardens that enchant guests from around the world. They've also hidden a tragic legacy. If they fall in love too deeply, their lovers vanish. So this is about a generation of these women and their relationships with and how they're affected by this sort of curse, which is why I say it might be more magic realism. It might not be like full-on fantasy, but regardless, I've heard wonderful things, and this cover is stunning. A book I know a little bit more about because I have read the first in this series, and that is Dragon Shadow, a Heartstone novel by L. Catherine White, the first book being called Heartstone. And this is some more dragons for this haul. It's a dragony haul, it turns out. And the first book in this series was actually a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, but with dragons. It was set in a fantasy world, a fantasy version of 1800s England, where Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley are actually dragon riders, and the elite, wealthy, aristocratic class of society are dragon riders, and have to protect the world from like aggressive magical creatures that might threaten the lives of ordinary people. And it generally follows that plot line of Pride and Prejudice, but with a bit more fantasy drama thrown in, and it's such good fun. If you like fantasy, if you like dragons, and you like 1800s period novels and Jane Austen, then this is definitely worth checking out. In a way it's a little bit cheesy, but in a really good way. And I'm so excited to read the sequel because it's not based on Pride and Prejudice anymore. We got the events of Pride and Prejudice in book 1, so from what I gather, this is going to be really L. Catherine White's own entire storyline that she's created from her imagination, but about the same characters. So I'm so intrigued to see what happens next, because I was definitely attached to them by the end of the first book. And then 2 more books I bought myself. The first one is Queen of Blood, the first in the Queens of Renthia series by Sarah Beth Durst. I'm currently halfway through this one at the moment, actually, and it is a high fantasy novel. I mean, what else could this possibly be? Set in a world where the magic is associated with spirits. So there are 6 elemental spirits. There are earth spirits, fire spirits, water spirits, air spirits, ice spirits and wood spirits, and they are a danger to humans because they see humans as sort of damaging their world, and so they feel a lot of aggression towards them, and the only people that can control them are these women born with affinities for spirits, one of whom becomes a queen in every generation to exercise control over all the spirits and stop them from hurting people. And we follow a young woman who is being trained to potentially become one of the next heirs to the queendom at an academy for these women that have affinities for spirits, and then beyond in her life and what happens. Yeah, and I will let you know more about my thoughts in this one in my mid-month wrap-up, although I did mention a few of my thoughts in my currently reading video, so you can check that out if you're interested, but it is an intriguing premise. And then lastly we have a second-hand fantasy book that I bought, which cost me about £2 in a random second-hand bookshop that I went in Blackheath in London, which was a lovely second-hand bookshop, and I just had to buy it. I thought this cover was brilliant. It's called Disney Rising by Catherine Kurtz, and it's volume 1 of the Chronicles of Disney. And I don't know anything about it, to be perfectly honest. I just thought that cover looked brilliant. It says in the back that it's a sweeping tale of romance and sorcery set in an imaginary kingdom of Gwynedd, where the mysterious forces of magic and the superior power of the church combine to challenge the rule of young Kelson, who came to the throne when his father was brutally murdered by the sorceress Carissa. The fate of Disney, a quasi-mortal race of sorcerers, and indeed the fate of the 11 kingdoms rest on Kelson's ability to quash the rebellion by fair means or foul, even by prescribed use of magic. Sounds great, doesn't it? What more could you want? I then have a book that I borrowed from my boyfriend, and that is Paradise Wrought, a novel by Jenny Hval. Jenny Hval is a Norwegian singer, and this is her debut novel, I believe, translated from the Norwegian into English and published by Verso. And this was such good luck, because over Christmas Verso does 50% off all of their books on their website, and I was trying to pick a couple to treat myself to, but didn't obviously want to go overboard, and was trying to narrow it down, and this was on my short list of books to buy from their 50% off sale. And then my boyfriend said he was getting it for Christmas, and I thought, well then, save myself a pretty penny and borrow it off him. He's already read it. It's a magic realism, surreal novel. Again, this one follows a Norwegian student who's moved to a new country to study abroad, and moves in with some new flatmates and has some like weird magic surrealist stuff happen as she kind of finds herself and explores her relationships with other women and herself as a queer woman, and I'm so excited. And then I have 3 books that were sent to me by the publishers for review. The first one I requested, and that is Women in the Room, The Labour's Forgotten History by Nan Sloan. I talked about this in my currently reading video because I'm currently reading it and loving it. This book is so good. I'm still maybe only like a quarter of the way through, but honestly, pick it up. It's brilliant. It essentially focuses on women's involvement in political movements surrounding the trade unions and the Labour Party prior to the formation of the Labour Party in the United Kingdom, and its early years up into World War I, and just about how these women's roles have been overlooked, and how women were involved in more than just suffrage, as much as the women's suffrage is an obviously incredibly important issue. There were other political movements going on that women were involved with over those decades, and sort of shining light on that, and I'm just loving it. I was then sent by Picador It's Not About the Burqa, edited by Mariam Khan. This is an anthology of essays written by various different Muslim women on faith, feminism, sexuality and race, it says in the back, and that's a sort of list of some of the contributors. But I was particularly interested and requested a copy of this for review because I follow Mariam on Twitter and have done for years, and think she is absolutely fantastic. I'm always really interested in listening to her kind of commentary on what's going on in the world, and I just was really intrigued to see this obviously collection that she's brought together and also contributed to. Also, just off topic slightly, but look at this hardback. Is this not beautiful? Just wow. Well done, Picador. Like, that's some snazzy publishing. And then sent to me by Simon & Schuster is The Burning by Laura Bates. Laura Bates is an author whose non-fiction I adore. I've read both her adult non-fiction works, and she runs the Everyday Sexism Project, which you can follow on Twitter, and is also really incredible. And this is her debut novel. It's a young adult novel exploring what happens to a teenage girl when a nude picture of her is leaked around her school, and the bullying that results from that and how it affects her life, the sexism, the abuse, the everyday sexism. It sounds super contemporary and relevant to young people, but also older women's experiences of the 21st century. And how like social media can be used in the sort of like sexist sexual abuse framework, and I think, wow, I mean, if anyone was to write this book, I'm so pleased. It was Laura Bates, and I'm so glad that she has written it. But then I thought I'd briefly mention a book that I picked up on my Kindle, which is upside down, and that book is the Raven Ballad. So this book is the sequel to another book by the same author, naturally, Emma Hamm, and it is part of a duology retelling the Swan Princess fairy tale. The first book in this series was so dark. It really explored that dark side of the fae magical world, and I just thought it was so well done, so creepy, so enthralling, and that ending, I mean, this is Emma Hamm's thing. She tends to leave things on quite dramatic endings, so you need to read the next one, and now I have the next one on my Kindle, so I'm really excited to find out what happens next to our characters. But sorry, I don't think I mentioned there, the first book is called The Faceless Women, so obviously I would recommend reading that first, and I'll link both down below. But yeah, like I said, need to know what happens there. But those are all the books I have recently acquired. I do hope you have enjoyed this book haul. Let me know if you have any thoughts on the books I have mentioned. I love chatting to you all, and until next time, happy reading. I'll see you all again soon. Bye guys.